Welcome to another episode of Trash Talk. I'm Jon-Bernard. This is Nick. We're the Kairouz Bros, giving you what's hot in the world of combat sports this week. Nick, we just came back from Paris, the Olympics. We're back home in Sydney. Had a whirlwind. We just did UFC 305. How's it feel to be back home?
Great to be back home. I hated Paris. It was too hot. No one wants to use any air conditioning. I don't know why.
Yeah, it's a European thing.
The Olympics, look, it's very hit and miss, and I think this is a bit of a miss this year.
Miss year.
I think everyone's kind of taking a shit on it for different reasons. Not more so the sport, more so the other aspects of the Olympics.
Yeah.
But the sport, I have been watching some Olympic sports like the tennis or the basketball. Not much else. Very happy for Novak.
Yeah, finally getting the gold medal. I don't know. Yeah, it's great to see him win.
And then Australia blowing the lead last night. Not very happy, but Serbia again coming out on top.
Yeah.
And that means USA basketball is just going to stroll through to the final.
I got to go there. Olympics has been an absolute shit show. I think we'll get into that later in the show. But my highlight from the Olympics has been the Turkish guy. As I'm sure I've been seeing him dishing out kebabs on the street of Europe, but he made just hand in the pocket. He's been the highlight for me. The rest has been absolutely disgusting. A lot of people are saying worst Olympics to date. Like, I didn't watch much of Tokyo. Tokyo was a lot better. Presentation.
The problem with Tokyo was it was delayed a year. So people kind of lost interest. COVID kind of ruined it a bit. People were wearing masks
But a lot of people are off the Olympics this year, and it hasn't been as enjoyable as it has previously. But Australia are doing well.
Mate, they're the third best country in the world.
A lot of the gold medals have come from swimming, but it's good to see the Aussies doing well.
A lot of women winning gold medals for Australia. So I think we've got the most athletic women in the world.
Yeah, which is great for us.
Great. I'm so proud.
Great for the gene pool. Great for the gene pool. Let's get into the MMA hot take. We do the hot take every single week. This week's MMA hot take: will UFC 308 be the best card of the year?
I think it will be. Abu Dhabi, the people that have put the card on there, they must be splashing cash because they've got Dana White putting on the best card of the year. Just go through the fights. Topuria Holloway, BMF versus the featherweight champion. They've talked a lot of shit. Max Holloway looks like he's in career best form.
You got Khamzat Chimaev versus Robert Whittaker. This was supposed to happen in Saudi Arabia. It's happening now. And honestly, the odds are that Khamzat Chimaev pulls out again, if I'm being honest.
We'll get into that. Ankalaev versus Rakic. I don't know why Ankalaev is fighting. He could have held out for Pereira for a title fight, but the Abu Dhabians, the people in the UAE, they want him to fight.
Cash.
Then another big fight, big heavyweight fight. Cyril Gane
versus Volkov.
That is massive because Cyril Gane hasn't fought since John Jones, which was last March. He's been dodging everyone left, right, and centre.
Allegedly dodging. I don't want to.
No, he's been dodging. If you haven't fought for over a year after a quick first round loss, you're dodging people. So for him to verse Volkov, I think he knows it's an easier fight for him, so he wants to win.
Why I think this is the best card of the year? It's absolutely stacked with fights people want to see. Great heavyweight fight. Ilia Topuria's on the card defending his title. This is what UFC 300 and the Sphere should have been. Well, the way that Dana sells the fight, this is going to be the best fight card of the year, or the Sphere is going to be the best combat sports event of the year. And then you deliver fights with like Diego Lopez on there. Like, I'm no shot at Diego Lopez and whoever else is on the card. It's just like not the big fights that people are clamoring for, like title fights or contender fights. And this is just what people want to see. And it's crazy that the people in Abu Dhabi get it. Like you said, they must be splashing the cash because I thought this is UFC 300 level worth of fights.
Well, let's be honest. 300 was a great card. They were stacked with great fights. I think what was promised by Dana is what disappointed fight fans. UFC Noche, I think, is the one that's most disappointing. Like we said last week, he put out an announcement to make an announcement about the announcement of the fights, and that was underwhelming.
I mean, you still got Sugar Sean and Merab on there, but I just think the people under him and, the prelims and that whole thing for a spectacle that's supposed to be the combat sport event of the year, I think they're going to lean heavily into the production of the whole Sphere and say, look what we're doing, how we're dressing up, one-time only event. But in terms of fights, this is the best card of the year for sure.
If you're comparing UFC 308 to UFC Noche, Abu Dhabi wins with flying colours. Even the main event, I'm more looking forward to Topuria Holloway than I am looking forward to Sugar Sean.
But even if you compare it to other cards of the year, like what was your favourite card of the year other than UFC 300? I'd have to say maybe
UFC Miami.
Miami?
UFC Miami, because that was stacked. It was pretty deep. Even the Kevin Holland fight versus MVP, that was very entertaining. Dustin Poirier getting the knockout, getting himself back into the title picture. There was a lot more happening and there were good fights. Cheeto Vera versus Sugar Sean did deliver as a fight as well. The crowd getting behind Cheeto was awesome.
Yeah.
Besides that though, like what, UFC 301 in Brazil? Flop.
Absolute flop.
Volkanovski versus Poirier in Anaheim? Pretty disappointing card.
It was because Aussies couldn't go there and get behind him. It was pretty tough. And he lost, which was a sour taste for me.
Sean Strickland in Canada, terrible card.
Yeah, he even said, like, they're giving me shit cards. You know what I mean?
So really, I mean, like Newark as well. Paulo Costa versus Sean Strickland, that kind of flop. Poirier versus Islam delivered.
New Jersey has been one of the better cards of the year. But the fights just didn't deliver as what we wanted.
Well, that was very main event heavy.
And then you know Dana White's thoughts on UFC Manchester. Half the crowd was asleep. He said the main event wasn't a barn burner and was very disappointed. No bonuses anymore after that. So look, in terms of the fights that people want to see, and I think fights are going to be electric. UFC Abu Dhabi is going to be the fight, the card to see this year.
I know it's early, but let's go through some fight predictions.
Early predictions. All right, let's start with Volkov versus Cyril Gane.
I think Cyril Gane mops the floor with him. I think Cyril Gane has a chip on his shoulder from all the shit that's been talked by Tom Aspinall, by John Jones, by a lot of fight fans saying he is rubbish.
Yeah.
And Volkov, he did upset Pavlovich, which I was very surprised by.
Well, and he mopped the floor with Tai Tuivasa.
Yeah, but that's like
in our hometown.
That's like fighting a little kid. Okay, Tai Tuivasa is not at that level anymore. Okay, he's never been a top 5 fighter. But Volkov, careful. I think he's just a bit out of his depths fighting Cyril Gane. I think he's bit off more than he can chew, and he'll get found out in this fight.
Heavyweight bout. Light heavyweight bout. Rakic versus Ankalaev.
Well, I've spoken to a lot of MMA experts who have said Rakic is a kickboxer and just doesn't match up well to Ankalaev, who's a very heavy wrestler. And in Abu Dhabi, do these fighters lose? Never.
The reason why, and we never bet against a Dagestani, we never will. Not that we want to see them take over the sport, but they kind of are. Ankalaev wants to put on a show for this Pereira fight. Everyone's asking, why aren't you getting Pereira yet? He says, listen, whoever Hunter and Dana put in front of me, I go and I'll knock him out. I don't care. He's going to wrestle him. I think he's going to get the better of him. I think this is an easy Ankalaev win. He'll be the short price favourite for sure.
Yeah, and it's like, the last time he was in Abu Dhabi, there was that stoppage against Johnny Walker.
Yeah.
I don't think he wants to do that again. He's going to make up for that poor performance. So I expect him to win pretty easily.
And Johnny Walker, I mean, not the sharpest opponent against Ankalaev. He's been knocked out by just about everyone in that division. Okay, what about this one? Khamzat Chimaev versus Robert Whittaker.
Again, we said it going into the Saudi Arabia card. Our prediction was Khamzat wins. I think he's just going to be overbearing in the wrestling. Is it a 3-round fight? I think they said it might be 5 rounds.
No, it's going to 5 rounds. It's now a 5-round fight.
So
that's what I read online.
That does bring into question the cardio
and
of Khamzat.
The gas tank.
But I think he gets it done before 3. I think he somehow takes him down, demolishes him, probably submits him. The overbearingness of his wrestling, I don't think Whittaker can keep up with.
Look, you asked me this 2 months ago. I'm saying Khamzat Chimaev every day of the week. You saw what he did to Kamaru Usman. After that performance from Robert Whittaker against Ikram, I think this is like not a new and improved Robert Whittaker, but a Robert Whittaker that's prepared for Khamzat. You could tell he came out ready to go in the first round. Usually Whittaker gets off to a slow start. He doesn't come out of the blocks. That's what happened against Costa. That's what happens when he loses against Adesanya. So if he can get out of the blocks in the first round, bring it to Khamzat, and then test his gas tank, I'm going with Robert Whittaker. He made a statement against Ikram. I want to see him do well as an Aussie, and this will obviously put him in the trajectory to getting a title bout that he's been in search for. Not that he goes up against Strickland. I think Strickland's next in line, but he's gone for the title. He wants to be in the name that if he wins here against Khamzat, he holds out for a title shot 100%.
No, to be fair, if he does win, I think he overlaps Strickland. He's been more active. He's beaten 2 guys that, were...
Well, you got to think, he's beat Costa, Ikram, and then beaten Khamzat. Like, I'd say puts him in line for a title shot as well. But how active can he be? Everyone gets injured when they fight Khamzat Chimaev. But, I mean, look what happened to Usman last time as well.
And is this Khamzat's first middleweight fight?
Well, yeah, he's going up since... I mean, what weight did him and Usman fight at?
They fought at middleweight, yeah.
Yeah, so I'd say it's his second.
First, no, but I'm saying because Kamaru Usman's not a true middleweight.
Maybe 4th? Yeah, I don't know. I'd have to look into it. But, look... I'm not going to discount Khamzat Chimaev. Right now, my pick is still Khamzat. I just want to go with Whittaker. Being Aussie, we've met him. He's putting in the hard yards. He's still ready to go. After beating Ikram in 1 round, he's ready to go now. I'm glad he's taken the call, but I'm going with Khamzat.
Khamzat's not a Dagestani. He's Chechenian, but it's basically the same thing. True. So you don't back against them. They're undefeated for a reason.
Yeah, he wrestles like one anyway. Okay, the main event. Topuria versus Max Holloway. Topuria versus Max Holloway. Early prediction. Who are you going?
I want to go to Topuria. I think he's just a better, more stronger fighter. And Max Holloway has struggled with little guys before. Though Max Holloway, if it's a Max Holloway versus Justin Gaethje, that'll be very, very tough to beat. Max Holloway was piecing Justin Gaethje. He just couldn't miss. He was the perfect fighter in that fight. But I think Topuria, He's just a more complete fighter, and he's hot right now. He's young. He's got the power. He's got the drive. I'll go Topuria. Early prediction, Topuria.
Every time we've spoken about a card this year, you got to go with the young bull. And
hey, age is always a factor.
Age is always the biggest factor.
Father time gets everybody.
I mean, it happened to Volk. I mean, who else did it happen to if we've gone with the young bull? I mean, if we're looking at Australian boxing, Curtis Scott, we went with the young bull. Not to bring that in, and that was a terrible display of boxing in Australia.
Belal was 36, Leon was 32. So
okay, that's where he also had a year and a half to prepare for Leon. And I'm going to go with Ilia Topuria as well. I think his striking's second to none. People in the MMA space, people who he trains with say, this guy is the real deal. Okay, his striking's unbelievable. He can match it in the wrestling as well. Look what he did to Volkanovski, one of the greatest featherweights of all time. I think if Volk can get the best of Max Holloway 3 times, I think Ilia Topuria can. If they're going to go into a strike-off, it's going to be very interesting. I'm going with Ilia. But this is the craziest Max we've seen. I think this is the most confident, and this is the path for Max to finally get gold, a featherweight champion. But I just think Topuria is going to be too good. I'm going with Ilia Topuria.
Does he get the BMF if he wins? Does he become a double champ?
I think both titles should be on the line.
They haven't really stated.
I don't think it counts as a true double champ, in the UFC double champ eras. It's not like going up a weight division and getting double champ. But I think the BMF should be on the line. And Topuria should be known as 2 belts Topuria.
Well, I mean, you do want to be considered the baddest mother effer in the UFC. Yeah. So if I do win, I'm demanding the belt if I'm Topuria. That's all I'm saying.
I think if he wins, he's BMF and featherweight champion.
But quickly going back to Khamzat. Since 2020, 2021, he's pulled out of the majority of his fights. Yes. And then there are now betting markets for his fight against Whittaker, whether he will pull out.
Well, really, Khamzat versus Robert Whittaker was announced by Dana for the UFC Abu Dhabi card. Everyone immediately says, I'll be surprised if Khamzat makes the card. Okay, but no one has faith in him. He's either saying he's getting violently ill.
Which he has been. He's been in hospital.
He's been in hospital many times. Or he doesn't make weight and just pulls out of the card. I think if you're announced for a second time of the fight, he's a guarantee to make the card. But the internet doesn't think he's going to make it. So much so, the odds makers don't think he's going to make it. And they're saying he's a favourite to pull out of the card.
They've actually put betting odds that he's the favourite to pull out of the fight. Jeez, like that. The betting guys usually know. Vegas knows. They know.
I know.
What mail do they have? Do they know he's going to get pneumonia again or something?
I just think it's a pattern recognition. He's pulled out of multiple cards, multiple big fights. He pulls out of this one. I don't think he is. I think Robert Whittaker works too hard for this. And even if they do, they would have to just cancel the fight
and that makes
because they can't replace another fighter for Whittaker to face. It just wouldn't be worth his time.
It's very, very scary though, because if there's money on him not fighting, someone could poison him, someone could bash him. They could if they've got money vested on this, they would make sure he doesn't fight.
You can get into the camp, make sure he doesn't do
I've heard of these mafia stories when it comes to gambling, that people go to extreme lengths to make sure people don't win their bets.
I don't know if anyone's allowing that big lots of cash to be put on him not making the card. I think there's a little element of liability there. But look,
I mean,
personally, I think Khamzat makes it. I think he goes out and tries to make a statement. He looks like he's been training. I don't know if you saw the footage of him wrestling with Luke Rockhold recently.
Yeah.
Mate, I know his gas tank hasn't been tested too much, but these guys were going at it. It looked like they were wrestling rounds. It was very physical. Again, a former champion, Luke Rockhold's no slouch. And I think he's going to come in tip-top shape into the octagon. You're going to see him the same Khamzat that fought Kamaru Usman, who just immediately pounced on him and did not let up, wrestled, and can strike as well. His best chance is going to be not striking with Robert Whittaker. And I think he gets in there. I don't think he's going to bow out like the odds makers think he is, like the internet thinks he is. Look at Paulo Costa. He's changed his reputation. Paulo Costa used to be the person that didn't make it to a card. Now he's been on his last 2 fights. 2 straight fights. I think Khamzat goes on a bit of a run here. He's got a lot to prove. And he needs to show that he can make weight and be a champion in the UFC. So I think he makes it.
I'm very surprised that he wrestled with Rockhold. After knowing where his hand has been with Craig Jones, I would not touch him.
Yeah, that was very, very odd to me. Those jiu-jitsu guys.
If I saw that photo of Luke Rockhold, I'm never wrestling him again. Just keep your hands away from me.
It's kind of haram, isn't it?
Yeah, bit haram.
Just gay jiu-jitsu, isn't it?
Yeah, so I wouldn't have gone near it.
Yeah, okay. Let's move on because, like we said, we were at the Paris Olympics over the last week. We had an interesting time. We covered a bit of the sport, spoke to a lot of the Olympics fans. But this had me thinking, should MMA be an Olympic sport?
I think it's been spoken about before, and given the amount of shit sports that are on during the Olympics, I'm talking archery, breakdancing, skateboarding. I'm pretty sure MMA is a much better, more athletic sport than those sports and definitely should be part of the Olympics. I mean, rugby sevens is a sport now at the Olympics.
Yeah, look, I mean, when you got sports like 3-on-3 basketball, okay, that no one really plays. I mean, Ice Cube's trying to start a league, but we play that at the park.
Yeah.
You know,
That's
we're not
a pickup
Olympians.
game when you're trying to make up
numbers.
numbers.
It's a pickup game. They actually play basketball. When you got breakdancing, like what's the criteria of breakdancing? I think how come Chris Brown can't just enter breakdancing and the cast from Step Up?
Channing Tatum, I think, would win that event pretty easily.
Like breakdancing's not really a true sport that young kids want to get into. I mean, dancing, I know figure skating is in there. I mean, there's enough gymnastic events to cover the whole Olympics, really.
Canoeing? How is canoeing a sport over MMA?
Do you grow up and say, I want to get into breakdancing and I want to get into kayaking?
Well, the thing is, but there's wrestling. So does wrestling count as MMA?
Wrestling is like, that's ancient. You know, Greco-Roman wrestling has been there. But MMA, I think, has showed that it is truly the true art of mixed martial arts. The thing is, the Olympic Committee have said it can't be a sport because it's too brutal of a sport and it doesn't align with the Olympic values. It's really too aggressive and, barbaric.
Well,
that's their view.
What's boxing?
But you could argue that boxing causes a lot of CTE and a lot of head damage to fighters. So there's no that argument. If it's done under professional rules and it's sanctioned like how it is in the US and in Brazil, I don't see why it shouldn't be an Olympic sport. I'm sure boxing had to go through this as well to become an Olympic sport for sure.
No, I think because they wear the headgears, it's considered amateur boxing. They kind of give it a bit more
Yeah, but
leeway.
is it considered amateur? Like, you got fighters like the Aussie fighter, Harry Garside, who went professional and then all of a sudden becomes an amateur.
I don't know what happened.
You know what I mean? So they're very, what's the term like?
Fluid?
On who can be an Olympian and who not. The whole professional basketball team can be Olympians. All the NBA stars can be Olympians, but the soccer guys can't.
They make up their own rules. But MMA, I don't see it becoming an Olympic sport anytime soon because of the gruesomeness of it. Because it is brutal. It is a very brutal sport.
Well, a lot of throughout history, the Olympics said the sport's too dangerous, and the issue is, I think MMA and UFC is illegal in some countries. Not to say European countries, because you have seen UFC Paris and UFC throughout Europe, Spain, but I think like a lot of them, not Middle Eastern countries, but maybe some South American countries.
Yeah.
I don't know. It must be illegal in some countries.
I mean, it's getting more popular and catching on, so maybe over time it can become an Olympic sport. I just highly doubt it for the time being.
Well, I'm just saying, I don't want to see breakdancing, archery, even marksmanship with the gun shooting and bullseyes. I want to see MMA. I want to see who wins gold in MMA. And maybe they can change it. They can do a tournament style where it's not fucking 3 rounds. Maybe it's 2 rounds and who gets the better of the 2 rounds. I don't know. And it's judged. I'd like to see it happen.
The Olympics needs to cut a lot of sports though. There's a lot of fat that needs to be cut off to make it a lot more interesting.
100%. Now let's move over to something that was massive in the news this week. Donald Trump was on a stream with Aiden Ross.
As you do. That's just
I don't know what simulation we're living in now, but it seems like everything, when you look on Twitter, it's just another South Park episode, okay? It was a very entertaining stream. There was a lot of clips that came out from it with, what's Donald Trump's thoughts on Kanye West, what's his thoughts on Kamala Harris in the political race. Aiden Ross asked him who's his favourite UFC fighter. And he's answered in the past Donald Trump, but he said, my favourite fighter is Khabib. He likes winners. He gets behind winners. The guy's one of the best fighters of all time. Has a winning record. He beat Conor McGregor. One of the highest selling UFC pay-per-view guys in history.
He's maintained this point of view for a very long time. I think at least back to 2018, Donald Trump has said Khabib's my favourite fighter. I don't know whether it's the discipline, the success. He does gravitate towards Khabib, which is weird because there's been so many MAGA pro-American fighters that have put Donald Trump on a pedestal. I'm talking Colby Covington, Jorge Masvidal. Yeah. Michael Chandler's even said he's my favorite, my president.
Yeah.
So you think Donald Trump would have chosen an American fighter?
I would have thought he would have gone with Colby Covington. The amount of time Colby's worn the MAGA hat, pretty much taken the Trump MAGA persona, called the president, visited the president at Mar-a-Lago, and for Trump to go with Khabib, it kind of says something. And he's also spoken about how him and Khabib have spoken about ending wars, whether that's in Russia or whether that's overseas in the Middle East right now. He said he's spoken to him about that and he believes Trump can do it. Maybe on a diplomatic level, they really get along. Khabib seems to like him. So good on Donald Trump. But someone that's had a lot to say about that, Conor McGregor.
Was not a fan of it at all.
Conor McGregor went to Twitter and basically said, this could cost you the presidency. He said, picking Khabib as your favorite fighter is stuff that will lose you the election. I don't know if Kamala Harris has a UFC favourite fighter, but he thinks this is seriously going to cost him the election. He's also gone on to say, why is he a favourite fighter? Michael Chandler also bit back, and Conor McGregor said, listen, kid, he doesn't even know you. Okay, he doesn't even know you. But he went, one of the funniest tweets he put out was, Trump's favourite fighter, here he is, in a tiny tub with a fellow inbred pals in Dagestan. Can you spot him? Where's Khabib? Find Khabib. And it's the boys, all the Dagestani boys in a bath together. Now, one of the funniest photos I've seen, and he's alluding to Khabib being on the run, find Khabib, because he's had some issues with Russia. He's absolutely gone at Khabib here. He has been going on for some time. Not that we'll ever see this fight again, but Khabib never bites back. Ali Abdelaziz, Khabib's manager, says you're a person of hate and Khabib's a person of love, and you'll never see this. You're truly going to pay for these tweets. But at the end of the day, is Conor McGregor just got harping on Khabib for the sake of it?
Well, the rivalry is never dead because Conor McGregor can't let it go. I don't think Khabib's spoken about Conor McGregor since the fight that they had, in 2018?
Yeah.
So Conor McGregor is still the only one that's hateful towards Khabib.
Is he just salty that Donald Trump picked Khabib as the fighter?
I don't see why he would care. I mean, was he going to say McGregor? Is he angry he didn't say McGregor? I do agree with Conor though. Like, as a president of America, choose an American fighter.
Yeah.
It's just a smart political move. Like Conor's not entirely wrong in that regard, but he has been consistent. He has said Khabib for a very long time. But if I was a president and I was optimistic about the country, I'd be saying, Michael Chandler, I really like him, or Dustin Poirier. Dustin Poirier would have been a great pick.
Yeah,
everyone loves Dustin Poirier.
Yeah, the diamond. But look, I'll tell you what, this bath, Islam's in the bath. Ankalaev's in the bath. I think Umar's in the bath. You can find Khabib in there as well. It's a small bath too.
You've seen the sweaty.
I've never seen this photo before. You've seen the
sweaty gym footage. Right? Yeah. These guys are elite level athletes. They've got certain procedures and ways of training that we don't understand. But that's the method to the success.
But do you think Conor McGregor just has this bath pic on his phone ready to go, ready to tweet out?
Well, he's probably got a whole liked album or saved photos just of Khabib hate and Dagestani hate. He's firing at every opportunity he gets. Yeah. He's called them inbred at least 100 times just this year.
And then following those tweets, in a since deleted tweet, he says, I'm currently in an auction to buy the house that was repossessed from Khabib, and it's going to be mine. So talk about a level of hate. He must hate Khabib that much. Imagine he ends up buying Khabib's repossessed house, and he's just strolling around making videos in Khabib's house in Dagestan.
Listen,
what would he do? What would he do with his house?
If I was McGregor, I wouldn't step foot in Dagestan.
No way.
Just don't go anywhere near the country, okay? Because you're not welcome. As he should be, because he's spoken a lot of shit about the country. But I think
that's the epitome of hating someone. You talk shit about him online, you're uploading him with his video, photos of his cousins with bath. You want to buy his house. You want to walk around in his house. I mean, I don't think we're ever going to see another rivalry like Khabib versus Conor. Not in the UFC. There's nothing that stacks up to it. You can talk about John Jones and Daniel Cormier. You can talk about Rashad Evans and John Jones. Maybe that level of hate. This is the most hateful, spiteful feud in the UFC.
They've settled their beef, John Jones and Daniel Cormier. I've seen the phone call. That was squashed. You could tell how much they liked each other. You could tell how much they liked each other on that phone call.
Well, speaking of Twitter beefs, there's been multiple throughout the last 2 weeks. One that has pretty much given up on his fight. Michael Chandler has essentially given up on his fight. Judging by his tweets, he says, "Never mind, guys. I think it's time to finally admit the fight is off." He says he's still on stage 2 of the 7 of grief pertaining to his career being over. Figured he'd be closer to 5 by now. Godspeed.
Well, if there was anyone that should have realised the fight wasn't going ahead much earlier, you think it'd be Michael Chandler. His hopefulness was maybe giving me belief that the fight was going ahead. I think even earlier that day or earlier in the week, he said December is likely going to happen.
He said December, UFC 310.
So I don't know why he's all of a sudden done a 180 and said it's not going ahead.
Conor McGregor was a bit confused too. He goes, "You okay, little bro?" Swapped out handy. Blessed MMA. What are you doing in December? The real BMF. Let's do it. So he's saying I could just swap you like that for Max Holloway.
That would be a great fight. If I'm Conor McGregor, I do that. I swap him out because Max Holloway is a better sell than Michael Chandler. But Michael Chandler would probably neck himself if that does happen because he's preparing for this for 3 years now? No, not 3 years, but 2 years he's been off, waiting for Conor McGregor. If Max Holloway took his spot, he'd be on suicide watch.
Well, I think Michael Chandler was ready to fight. He's ready to go. He must be still training. Then he saw footage of Conor McGregor partying with some dwarf who was trying to crack onto Conor McGregor and just thought this guy's never going to fight. He doesn't want to fight. He's walking out like The Undertaker at bare knuckle. He's in the vest. He looks like Stone Cold Steve Austin. He's partying with midgets. Like he doesn't want to fight. He doesn't look like look like he's ready to get into an octagon again. Just call your career a career and you're done.
The internet can be very misleading. And as Conor McGregor said, he's now prepared himself to go to Colorado Springs. He's going to go into a full fight camp to prepare for December. If he's putting out this information, I'm very confident that he's fighting in December.
Well, he still has 2 fights left on his deal. He needs to do those fights before he renegotiates, before he does anything else. So unless he does a flat-out retirement, he still has 2 fights to go. I want to see one by the end of the year.
He's fighting in December. Okay. Like they haven't announced a December card. It's going to be in Vegas. It makes sense. All the stars are aligning. Whether it's against Chandler or not, maybe that's the only part I can't confirm. But McGregor will fight in December.
Next Twitter beef I want to talk about: Belal Muhammad and Kamaru Usman.
Very something that's like they're just forcing it. This doesn't seem real. It's fake. It's
Kamaru
fake
Usman wants a title fight. Let's be honest, and I think it's going to happen in December. They're giving each other an excuse to fight. Belal Muhammad says, listen, I've got a lot of options. I'd like to fight Shavkat. Usman this was the most weirdest thing that Usman said in the tweet. He was like, you pretty much used my game plan fighting Leon. But you lost both times. So what game plan? I mean, he did your game plan better. He wrestled and wrestled well, dumped him on his head and stood up and struck with him. Didn't get head kicked to the head and didn't lose the second fight. So Belal said, what game plan? You know what I mean? Like, if I went with your game plan, I would have lost.
To be fair to Kamaru Usman, he's fought 10 rounds in championship fights against Leon Edwards, and you could say he's won 8. So really, the game plan he did work. One unlucky head kick, and then you could say maybe unlucky judging in the second fight.
Yeah.
So Kamaru Usman, he's not entirely wrong in making that statement, but Belal Muhammad was much more dominant, and he got the title fight.
Yeah.
Belal Muhammad, though, he's been saying Shavkat doesn't really deserve a title fight. Kamaru Usman doesn't really deserve a title fight. Then he's parading around like, once I win 2 more fights, I'm going to go for my double champ status. Belal, shut up. Okay, there's no chance.
Do you think he deserves, after 2 wins, does he deserve a double champ opportunity?
No, he doesn't. You need to have a minimum like 3 to 5 title
Clear
defenses.
the whole division. And I'm talking clear Colby Covington,
he's saying
clear a rematch with Leon Edwards. Go through your division before you go up.
He's saying he's already cleared everyone in the top 10 before winning the title, so he doesn't really need to defend it, which is a good argument to make. But then I would also combat that by saying, Belal, you're a midget. Going up to middleweight, you're smaller than Islam. If you're going to go up to fight Israel Adesanya, you're a dwarf compared to him. You can't compete at that size.
Even Dracus Duplessis. Yeah, but listen, you can't discount his wrestling. He's proved a lot of people wrong. I back Belal after what he did to Leon. When you have the whole city of Manchester hating on you, when you have the whole internet hating on you, and you go out and you ignore it, wrestle the guy to the ground, dump him on his head, and really bully him. He mauled him the whole fight. You got to give Belal his respect.
No, I give it to him.
He might not be the most entertaining fighter, and it's always going to go to a decision. But the guy won. He's the champion. He's the welterweight champion right now. You have to respect him. Someone that doesn't respect him, Colby Covington. He recently come out and said Leon Edwards is that bad. He belongs on the prelims. He was never that good, and he deserves a title shot. Now, why I say Colby should be in line right behind Kamaru Usman is because he's money. Everyone else in the division isn't that marketable and doesn't sell their fights as well. Leon Edwards cashed in, had a fight with Colby Covington, made a lot of money. Colby Covington said he looked disinterested after making money with Colby. I think it's Belal's turn. And if you want to talk about someone that would sell a fight against Belal Muhammad, it's Colby Covington. You could imagine what he's going to bring up. He'd bring up the wars. He'd bring up his family. He'd bring up everything to sell this fight. And that's something I want to see, personally.
I don't want to see it because he's showing against Leon Edwards means he's nowhere near title contention for the foreseeable future. He needs to go for a Shavkat and win to even be talked about back in that conversation for title fights. Kamaru Usman does seem next in line for the title, and I think they're trying to orchestrate this beef between them to try and sell a fight. If it does happen in December as a co-main event, I think that's the perfect slot for it. But Belal Muhammad needs to slow down on the double champ talk. Full respect to him. He's the champion. He's one of the best fighters. I think he's number 5 in the pound-for-pound rankings right now. I think that's very well deserved.
Yeah.
But double champ, it's a pipe dream.
Okay, slow down. Someone that needs to slow down as well is Tony Ferguson. Okay, Tony Ferguson, I think it's time to retire. 8 straight losses. And I thought he did retire. He took the glove off.
One glove.
He put one glove on in the middle of the octagon. Then he punched it for some reason. That was very random. Just punched the glove in the middle of the ring. Then as he was walking out of the octagon and then going into the back saying, nah, it's not time. I'm not done. And then in the press conference backstage, he says, listen, I can still sell fights. And so long as I can sell fights, I will still be fighting. But to go out the way he did, because in the lead up, it's like a cycle. You believe, you see footage of him training. You say, okay, could Tony Ferguson be back? Then you see he's in the best shape of his life. Then in media week, he says, you know, I've changed a lot of things up. I focus a lot on wrestling. I've gotten back into sparring. You think Tony Ferguson is back. And then he goes and loses in the first round. He gets submitted, you know, or he goes and gets knocked out. You know, it's the same cycle people believe, and then it's his 8th straight loss. Should Tony Ferguson retire?
Yes, he should for his own health and well-being. But for the fans, selfishly, no, don't retire. I want you to get that win. Okay, we've gone through 8 straight losses.
But what's the point? When's the point where Dana just cuts him? He does a Mokaev and says, Tony, done, you're done. That's enough.
Give him till 10 losses. That's 2 more fights.
10.
So he's got, if he loses 9, he gets 1 more shot. If he loses 10, that's it, Tony, that's too many. We're going into double-digit territory.
Yeah.
You already got the longest losing streak in the UFC history, so you're already treading in terrible territory. But he's a legend of the sport, and he does sell fights. I want to see him fight. When I see him on a fight card, I'm like, look, I want to see him win. It is something that is like WWE. Ric Flair, all these older wrestlers, they go on retirement runs. This is his retirement run. If he can win, let him keep going.
Well,
and if he's happy to keep fighting, let him go.
Islam Makhachev during fight week said, please, just Tony, it's time to retire. Like, I'm a fan of yours, but it's time you should retire. He said that during the week, and he was spot on. The guy lost in round 1. But if you're talking about fights to make for Tony, why don't you just put him up against Islam? Easy title defense for Islam. No?
He needs a layup. He needs someone outside of the top 15.
Finally give him a title shot.
I would say, like, let him like verse someone that's maybe going up, mate. Let him go up against Volkanovski or something. Like, let that happen. Both fighters need like a big name fight, something to do in the meantime.
I'm just worried Tony's becoming the fighter that they feed to fighters to get that win. He did, like, look what happened to Paddy Pimblett, right? Just give it to him. He needs a win. He needs to gain that momentum. And it happened again in Abu Dhabi. Again, a round 1 submission. You know, you're on to the next one. If you need that tune-up fight, just feed him Tony Ferguson. Tony Ferguson, you don't want to be that fighter.
He's that fighter, though. That's it. He's hit that age and he's hit that time in his career. And if he hits 10, I'm happy for him to go. And I'm happy for them to cut him. I don't want to see him go to another promotion because that'll just feel wrong. It'll feel disgusting. PFL, they don't deserve him. So give him till 10. If he loses 10, cut him. But I want to see him at least 2 more fights.
Okay. If you had to predict Tony Ferguson's next fight, is it someone in his division? Does he go up? Could it be maybe someone like, and I'm saying give him a layup, someone maybe challenging Shara the Bullet? Give Tony Shara.
That would be an entertaining fight for an Abu Dhabi, Saudi Arabian card to fill up the numbers, but Shara the Bullet's on a run. I know people have taken a shit on his wrestling, but he's a great striker and he's determined to win. I wouldn't want to see that because I think he'd beat Tony. I want to see Tony win. Okay. Tony deserves a W.
What's happening with Islam Makhachev now? He's pretty much confirmed his injury. That's why I think he's off the Abu Dhabi card. Does he have a rematch with Arman Tsarukyan? Or there's rumoured talks of Arman and Charles having a rematch for the interim belt. So do you think Islam should vacate his title while being injured and have an interim belt between Charles and Arman?
Well, during the fight week in Abu Dhabi, he had the cast on and he said, look, I'm not sure what's going to happen yet. I've got to wait, give it some time. Doctors will tell me what to do. But him not being on the Abu Dhabi UFC 308 card, I think all but confirms that he's seriously injured, probably needs surgery. So who knows how long that puts him out for. If he can't fight in December or January, then I think Tsarukyan should fight someone else for the interim title. It's what happens. If a fighter gets injured, the interim title fight happens. The only problem is Tsarukyan already beat Charles Oliveira. Charles Oliveira doesn't really deserve the title fight anymore, but no one else in the division does either. Justin Gaethje got knocked out. Max Holloway could potentially fight, but he's already fighting someone else for the title. So Charles Oliveira is the only other person available.
I know this has only been done in wrestling, but do you remember when Eric Bischoff just gifted the title to Triple H? Can we just give the title to Arman Tsarukyan while he's out?
Because he needs to earn it.
I mean, look, he beat Charles Oliveira, like you just said. That's why they're in talks of doing a rematch. And if a Charles Tsarukyan rematch happens, again, I think that fight could go either way. I'd like to see it happen, but if it's for the interim title, I think it's great for Arman, and that would probably set up a unification match when Islam is fine.
The only problem is it's matching up the activity of the fighters. If Tsarukyan fights in say it's going to be in November or December, when's Islam fight next? They got to wait another 3-4 months after that. So that means Islam doesn't fight till March, April. Mm-hmm. That's a long layoff again.
This could be very left field for the fans, but what about Tony Ferguson versus Arman for the title? For the interim title. That'll be Tony's title shot. That's the one we're talking about.
Look, he's already an interim title holder, Tony, And that's probably the worst thing that's ever happened to his career because he never got that fight against Khabib.
When you really think about it, but both are on an incredible run. Eight losing streak. Arman, what's he up to in terms of winning streak since his loss?
Doesn't matter.
It's up there.
Doesn't matter. Okay, Tony doesn't deserve to be anywhere near there. The only other person that maybe could come out...
Gaethje.
No, Dustin Poirier. Dustin Poirier's put his hand up. He wants a title fight. After his showing against Islam, he wasn't completely terrible as well.
And Arman Saruki and Dustin Poirier for the interim title to finally get gold for Dustin Poirier. That's something to get behind, and that could be his retirement fight.
Dustin's already been interim. It doesn't count as the actual title. He needs to actually win the gold, but at least he sets up one more championship fight that he actually did earn.
I'd love
if
to
he
see
does
it.
win. But I think Sarukian wipes the floor with Dustin. I think the wrestling and the takedowns will just be too much for him.
Okay, next topic I want to get into. Dana White has been glazing Jon Jones for the greater part of a year.
Man, more than a year. I think more than since...
honestly, since he walked over Cyril Gane. Let's be honest, it has been. He's been calling him the greatest heavyweight of all time. He's been calling pound for pound the best. He has come out and said Tom Aspinall and Jon Jones is eventually going to happen.
He said it's very likely. He's come out and said, look, if Jon Jones doesn't fight Tom Aspinall after Stipe, then he's going to be perplexed because that's the fight that's going to happen.
He said, he'd be shocked if it doesn't happen.
If I'm Dana White, though, I don't know where he's getting that info from. Maybe him and Hunter have got some, inside info with the managers.
No, see, I think he's talking to the competitor that Jon Jones is. He's thinking he's going to get over Stipe and he's going to take the fight that all fight fans want him to take. And we got a lot of backlash, I think, for our take on if Stipe should drop out. We're not giving enough respect to Stipe. I respect Stipe and what he's done for the heavyweight division. One of the best heavyweights of all time. And a lot of people, I think, are probably right. Jon Jones wants this legacy fight to say, I beat the best heavyweight of all time.
Yeah, but you didn't beat him at his best.
Doesn't matter before he takes an Aspinall fight. Let him have this legacy fight, solidify himself as the GOAT in the UFC, the GOAT of the UFC, Jon Jones, and then go and take this Tom Aspinall fight. There's no harm in doing that.
If I fight Floyd Mayweather when he's 70, does that make me a better boxer than him all time?
Stipe's not that bad. He's not 70-year-old Floyd Mayweather.
Compared to Jon Jones right now, he's basically that old.
Jon Jones is an aged fighter as well. He's not his best. He's not 27, 28-year-old Jon Jones.
Doesn't matter. He's 36 coming up. It's his second fight in the heavyweight division. Stipe Miocic is coming off a bloody knockout against Ngannou.
Yeah.
Where he looks like he's hobbling. He looks old.
Yeah.
He doesn't deserve to be in a title. I mean, I'm not saying he doesn't deserve it, but he just doesn't seem fitting because Tom Aspinall, if you compare him to Stipe, the athleticism, the quickness, the power, he just doesn't measure up to it.
Yeah, his average fight time went down after UFC Manchester. That's how much of a freak Tom Aspinall is. No one's really tested him. I think Jon Jones can take him into the later rounds. Everyone wants to see it. Dana White says it is eventually going to happen. I want to see it. Let's just make it happen. Let's announce it literally straight after UFC November.
What's that gonna
UFC
be?
Madison Square Garden.
I think there's rumours that it might be Sydney in February. Maybe we can get Jon Jones in Sydney.
That'd be huge.
I mean, I would love it.
Okay, what about Merab calling out Umar Nurmagomedov?
Well, he's come out and said that Umar, after the fight night win, Umar said, look, I'm next in line for the title. Merab has gone on about how he had to fight 6 times before he got a title fight and that Umar's getting everything that he wants just because he's Khabib's cousin.
Well, when you got Daniel Cormier coming out saying this is the best Nurmagomedov we've seen, well, that's a large praise.
Umar's gone back at Merab saying, listen, you didn't want to fight Aljamain. That's why it took you so many fights to go for the title. But Umar is a class fighter. He's a very dominant fighter. And no one else in that division really deserves a title shot. Peter Yan, maybe. You should probably set up Umar versus Peter Yan first before he goes for the title, just as a one more step up to solidify your title shot.
Well, the criticism people have of Umar is he's your classic Dagestani wrestler. You look at Muhammad Mokaev and all the criticism he's copped and getting cut for. Again, boring fighter that just kind of, his strength is his wrestling and he just leans on his wrestling and what he does. I mean, Sandhagen really didn't offer him much either. You saw the fight. He wasn't really coming to him and striking. He tried to change his stance here and there and come in. But, I mean, they get their wins. You can't really argue with it. Some will get cut for it, like Muhammad Mokaev. Some will get praised for it, like Umar. I want to see him get tested, so I want to see him face Peter Yan in that division.
There is definitely a double standard when it comes to those Mokaev versus Umar debate there. But in considering...
And look at Belal as well. Look at Belal.
In considering Umar, though, he does deserve a title fight because he has been very dominant. And as a Nurmagomedov, he does sell a bit more. And
Sugar Sean said, I'll happily take that fight. Sugar Sean basically said, I'll fight anyone in the bantamweight division.
Yeah, I think he just says that. I don't think he wants to fight Umar. I think Umar and Merab are just stylistic nightmares for Sugar Sean. And if Sugar Sean does somehow wrestle off Merab, Umar's probably even better at wrestling. If you had to really look at it objectively. And I think Merab versus Umar, that'd be just a wrestling fest. Like, if you're a wrestling fan, that's the fight you want to watch.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on Muhammad Mokaev getting cut? Like, again, we met Muhammad Mokaev last week. We interviewed him. He was great, down to earth, called us his Australian brothers. You know, we were asking him about what's happening with Manel Cape. He didn't want to kick him while he was down.
We bonded over Manchester United.
Yeah, we had a great chat. Then we find out he gets cut straight after the event, right? Dana White announces he gets cut. He's now turned into one of the funniest people on Twitter. He's showing memes of him getting jobs at McDonald's. He's shown memes of him being on the UK Centrelink, right? He was at UFC Abu Dhabi.
He's taking shits on PFL. He's firing back at the PFL
well, the
CEO.
PFL came out and said, we wouldn't want to sign him. He's too much noise outside of the octagon. He acts like a clown. So he bit back at the PFL, said, I was never going to sign with you anyway. You're salty I didn't sign. He wants to be in the UFC. It's now up to the UFC whether they give him a lifeline or not. Do you see him coming back at all? Has he learned his lesson?
I think because of the fanfare that he's made, and the fans have actually backed him and said, like, yes, he has had a bit of outside of the octagon trouble, but he does deserve, he's in that division as well, there's not many good fighters. He does deserve to be in the title picture.
Well, the fighters that have come out and backed him and said, listen, he didn't deserve to be cut. Aljamain Sterling has said he didn't deserve to be cut. Yeah, Tom Aspinall, who's a friend of Muhammad Mokaev's, said, look, I think he's a bit hard done by. He's learnt his lesson. He didn't deserve to be cut. With a 7-0 record, being one of the best in your division, there's not many other flyweight divisions elsewhere. You know, I think he's definitely hard done by being cut, but there's a reason for him being cut. And you know what I mean? And that's why Dana White has just done it. I think UFC eventually sign him and they give him a tough fight.
Time heals all wounds, and I think eventually they'll get over it. Muhammad Mokaev doesn't have much else to go to either. So I think, what does he do in the meantime? Just train and hope that he gets re-signed. The him being removed from the rankings for me was like the thing, like, okay, they're really off him. They really don't want him. So if he's removed from the rankings, I don't see him coming back anytime soon. That's the only problem.
Yeah, well, there's not many interesting fights that can happen in the PFL. But one thing that actually is everyone's talking about on the internet that can finally happen is Mighty Mouse versus Muhammad Mokaev, maybe in one.
Well, that would be a good fight. I think, geez, age would be a factor.
Man, Mighty Mouse is still known as one of the greatest in the flyweight division.
But age, mate, Muhammad Mokaev's only 23. That young drive and strength against one of the greatest fighters of all time, that should happen. I don't know if he's offered that, you got to take that because you've got nothing else going for you right now. And the way Dana's treating you, I wouldn't want to fight for him either.
I'm just saying, if a Mighty Mouse versus Mokaev could sell in a one, and they definitely get the interest of the internet and MMA fans, right? That could be the fight to bring him back to the UFC. If he has a great showing against Mighty Mouse, show he's learnt his lesson, there's no funny business into the lead up. They're not trying to punch on during fight week. He's not trying to sucker punch him at the hotel. Shows that he's learnt his lesson, has a good showing. I think that could earn his way into the UFC. Especially if he gets a win, that is his way back into the UFC. If they make that fight happen, I think he's going to hold out till he has another fight in the UFC. And it's probably going to be on the prelims.
Well, I mean, he's posted his percentages online. How can you cut a fighter with that win percentage, that dominant in his division as well? Like, I understand people might not be a fan of that fight style, but that is part of the game. It's MMA, it's mixed martial arts, and he's an expert at wrestling and takedowns. What do you want him to do? Not fight to his strengths? Yeah. Like, come on.
Well, let's look over to boxing. Boxing's made a lot of noise. Tim Tszyu just got announced for a fight. He's fighting for 154-pound division IBF title. He's been summoned to fight there. He wants to claim that. I don't know. They haven't sorted out a date yet. But the biggest talk about boxing right now is Canelo Alvarez's fight because it's going to be on the same time as UFC Noche. They're going head-to-head. That's going to be in September 5th, right? Conor McGregor says, Canelo, you're a bum. You've never sold. You've barely scraped 300,000 pay-per-view buys. And this is why Turk Al-Sheikh has distanced away from you. The Saudis distanced away from you because you were going from the easy fights when you lost Bivol. You lost against Bivol. So you've been trying to go those easy fights like Mugia and fighters that really don't sell, right? Is Turk Al-Sheikh and Conor McGregor correct? Does Canelo Alvarez sell? And is UFC Noche going to outdo Canelo's next fight?
Firstly, Conor McGregor, I love that you have to put your 2 cents in on everything because it makes everything so much more entertaining. Him having a shot at Canelo Alvarez, I mean, if anyone knows about pay-per-views, it's Conor McGregor. He's the highest grossing fighter of all time. I think he's got the top 10 pay-per-views of all time. him saying Canelo doesn't sell 300,000, I don't know if that's going to be correct or not though, but I do agree with him. I think UFC Noche will smash the boxing. I think for some time, at least over the last 5-6 years, boxing has had a slow drop-off and MMA, UFC has been rising drastically. Yeah. If you're going to go to choose an event to go to, UFC at the Sphere or T-Mobile Arena on Mexican Independence Day, you're going to go to the UFC. The only night at the Sphere. Yeah. It's going to be a one night event ever in the history of the UFC. I don't think they've got nothing to worry about. Turki Al-Sheikh, though, if you're a boxing promoter, I wouldn't distance yourself from Canelo. He's the biggest fighter in the world.
He's given his reasons why. He says he's trying to find the easy fights and really pat the stats of his record. Turki Al-Sheikh's trying to be the Dana White of boxing. He's saying, I want to put on the best fights as I possibly can and reward the fans. And that's why he's putting on fights with Terence Crawford. And you know, he loves Tim Tszyu. He's putting on fights with Tyson Fury, you know, and Anthony Joshua now, the new Anthony Joshua. So I understand. Canelo Alveraz said, I respect him as a businessman. Turki Al-Sheikh said, I don't care if you respect me as a businessman. I don't respect you because you don't want to take the tough fights. Well, that's pretty much what he said in the tweet.
Well, that's where Turki Al-Sheikh, he wants to make the money fights. And if Canelo's not going to be negotiating with him on that, I can understand why you'd be off him. But going forward, don't put him in the dark. Yeah, make a money fight with Canelo because that's where he's the biggest boxing superstar, at least in North America, South America.
Yeah, for sure. What about boxing at the Olympics? Okay, we spoke about it a bit earlier. We see NBA players play in the basketball at the Olympics. Why can't we see professionals go and win gold at the Olympics?
Well, it's weird because tennis has the best players in the world play. Basketball has the best players in the world play.
Yeah.
But for some reason, boxing doesn't. Why can't Tyson Fury and Alexander Usyk represent their countries and box?
It'd be way more entertaining. Like you see Novak Djokovic go, you saw what that gold medal meant for him because he won bronze and then he missed out over a number of years on his gold. Finally got his gold at age 36, 37, right? Like, it meant so much to him. Why wouldn't you want to see Alexander Usyk represent the Ukraine and try and win gold?
Well, they say it's amateur boxing. They wear the headgears.
Yeah.
And I don't know.
It is. The Olympics only do amateur boxing. It's amateur 3 rounds.
I don't know how a tournament style would work. Like, because usually the boxing activity, they fight once every 6 months to a year.
Yeah.
I don't know how they're going to fight 3 times in 2 weeks, 4 times in whatever it is.
Well, again, it's 3 rounds. They wear the headgears. It's amateur boxing. And that is what prevents it from being the dangerous and aligning with the Olympic values.
But it would create a lot of fanfare for boxing because you'd have all the best fighters in the world at one event.
Yeah, well, you've got different weight divisions. You have, you know, who gets the gold medal for heavyweights? Anthony Joshua fights. Well, does that take away the money that they make too, though, when you think about it? Because then you're seeing a 3-round fight between Anthony Joshua and Tyson Fury. That takes away from the cash they can make when they put it on at Wembley Stadium.
I didn't think of the commercial aspect.
Yeah, definitely. Why would you give away that money to the Olympics for?
Yeah, I know.
You saw Joe Rogan still to the Olympics. He thinks it's the biggest scam. The athletes make barely any money, and the Olympics make all the money from tourists, from ticketing, from pretty much all the commercial and sponsorship opportunities.
But to be fair, no one gives a shit about a lot of these Olympic sports. And now I'm seeing all these canoers and gymnasts biting their gold medals, getting 40 million views on TikTok. It does boost their profile a lot by winning gold at the Olympics. But they get paid shit. But like, who's going to watch canoeing? At least I understand in boxing, they can't fight now. Now that you mention it, don't ever have boxing at the Olympics because you're costing yourself millions.
Yeah, the boxers would never do it. But
I've done a complete 180.
If you had to talk about who do you think screws over the athletes more, the UFC or the Olympics?
The Olympics, guys. Because the majority of the athletes are living in the Olympic Village where there's no AC and shit
they're
food.
on a plant-based diet.
They're sleeping on cardboard beds.
Boxes,
That's disgusting. At least the UFC puts them in nice hotels.
Yeah, UFC.
The fighter hotels are always nice.
The fighter hotel's excellent. What do you mean? I think they get paid fairly reasonably as well, especially if you're on a UFC Abu Dhabi card or a Saudi card.
The cafeteria at the Apex looks phenomenal as well. We've had food there before. I mean, the way they treat their fighters is top tier. The Olympics, not so much. So I would say the UFC definitely is much better treatment.
Well, let's get to the wrap-up, the back end, the tail end of the show. We talk about our WWE. We pretty much called SummerSlam. We booked SummerSlam how it was going to be. All the turns. We called Dominic Mysterio turning on Rhea Ripley. We called Finn Balor turning on Damian Priest. We pretty much said CM Punk was going to lose. Drew McIntyre needed to win. And Roman Reigns came back. We pretty much said what Triple H was thinking. It was a very predictable SummerSlam, but was one of the best SummerSlams for a long time.
Got a lot of praise. Logan Paul being one of the highlights with the best move I've ever seen in a long time.
That somersault. Logan Paul's been the best celebrity wrestler
He's
of all time.
He's an athletic freak and he deserves all the praise as a wrestler.
He elevated the US title to heights we haven't seen it before, probably since The Miz probably since
John Cena's run with it.
Yeah, John Cena's Open Challenge run with it. Give Logan Paul the credit he deserves. I know he's scammed a lot of people with the crypto zoo. I can ignore that with his US title run.
Well,
Let's give him his props.
LA Knight and him was one of the most interesting US title feuds in a while.
Yeah.
I'm happy LA Knight's finally won the title. I didn't think Logan was going to drop it in his hometown. But just the wrestling that he's been putting on lately, just top class.
Well, let's talk about good guys and bad guys. Dominic Mysterio, right? Dirty Dom. He turned on Mummy. Okay, it was tough to see. Is he the best bad guy in the business right now?
Well, he gets the most heat when he's on the mic. I can't name another wrestler who, when they touch the mic, they're getting boos from the whole arena non-stop for at least 5 minutes. And he's elevated his character.
Well, now you've got a good guy, a face Rhea Ripley and Damian Priest. Face Rhea, you saw the reception they got. People love Rhea Ripley. Another Aussie we love to get behind. Is she going to be I think the top of the women's division as a face?
Well, I think she'll win the title off Liv Morgan, and that'll open up Charlotte Flair coming back.
Okay.
And because she does need to come back at some point and probably come back as a heel, because they need a female heel.
Good point. She's recovered from that ACL, I think. Now talking about the biggest face in the company, Roman Reigns. He came back, OTC on his shirt, original tribal chief. Is he going to be the biggest face of the company? And what happens with the bloodline from here?
Well, internally, the reports are the WWE are reporting that he's face.
He's listed as face.
He's listed as a face. So initially, I think he's going to come in and face Solo, sort out the bloodline civil war. They'll probably have a War Games match.
That's what I think. It's setting up for November Survivor Series, War Games, original bloodline versus bloodline 2.0. That's going to be interesting. And where does The Rock line up in all of this?
Well, I don't think he'll be featured till after that. But the problem is, if you're going to position Roman Reigns as a face, what does that mean for Cody Rhodes? Because they're going to have to eventually clash, whether it be at WrestleMania, whether it be at Survivor Series, I don't know. Royal Rumble maybe. But if they're both a face, Roman Reigns is going to outshine him. And that's going to be a very terrible thing for Cody Rhodes.
I think Paul Heyman comes back, injects himself behind Roman Reigns again. You see the wise man come back into this. I think you're going to have a big reveal at the end of Survivor Series. Like how we had CM Punk come last year, I think we have The Rock come back this year. And he is actually the head of the table, the tribal chief of Solo's bloodline. I think that's what's going to be the reveal. When I'm right, we can clip this.
How does that set up for Cody Rhodes though? Where does he fit in?
He's going to have to defend his title against a Roman Reigns or The Rock.
But I'm saying I
say he faces The Rock. This is what's going to. He would probably eventually face The Rock, which they maybe at Elimination Chamber or whatever it be, and he loses the title. Because I'm going to tell you right now, Cody Rhodes has lost a lot of momentum behind Roman Reigns. Roman Reigns is pretty much the face of the company. And to be fair, like Cody Rhodes, as good as he's been the company man, he's been a pretty boring champion.
Well, SmackDown has been falling off since he's become champion.
Especially compared to Raw.
And Raw's taken over.
Yeah.
And that's usually the reason SmackDown for the last few years has been the premier show was because of Roman Reigns.
Roman Reigns.
You got to acknowledge him. Since he's gone, it's dropped off. So Cody Rhodes, not that interesting of a champion, unfortunately.
I want to clip this up because this is great WWE chat and I think we pretty much booked the rest of the year till WrestleMania.
Well, we've got SummerSlam, right? So I wouldn't doubt our predictions.
Yeah. Well, that brings us to an end of Trash Talk this week. As always, thank you for tuning in. Make sure you check out our clips at Jon-Bernard K on Instagram and subscribe to Kairouz Bros on YouTube. That's all for Trash Talk today. Back to you in the studio, Ryan.